In the village of Solsis, located in the highlands of Sardinia, they held the Guinness World Record for the highest concentration of male centenarians on the planet. 20 people reached the age of 100 within a single 20-year window in a village of only a few hundred residents. The researchers who documented this, Michel Poulain and Giovanni Pes, were so startled by the numbers that they drew a blue marker around the region on a map. That was the origin of the Blue Zone concept. Sardinia was not just the first Blue Zone identified, it remains the only place on Earth where men live as long as women in roughly equal numbers past the age of 100. Giovanni Sanai is 93 years old. He still walks 6 miles a day through those mountain pastures. He eats 3 meals a day, has never counted a calorie, does not own a gym membership, and he avoids 5 specific things. These are 5 things that most people in the developed world consume every single day without thinking twice. You probably had at least 3 of them today. What Giovanni eats gets most of the attention, but what he does not eat is the missing piece, the part that makes everything else work. This is what you are going to walk away with today, a complete Sardinian eating system built around 5 specific removals. Not a supplement stack, not a meal plan that requires a cooking class, but a set of decisions about what to stop buying. The positive side, what to eat instead, costs around $40 a week at any standard supermarket, and most of it you may already have. Write this down if you can. This is the system Giovanni's generation built over a lifetime without knowing they were building it. The first thing Giovanni's generation stopped doing, or rather never started, is drinking cow's milk and eating commercial cheese made from cow's milk. This is not a dairy-free story. Giovanni eats more dairy than most Americans. The difference is the animal. Sardinia produces 60% of Italy's entire pecorino output. Sheep are everywhere in Ogliastra, on the hillsides, in the fields, tied up beside stone farmhouses. The shepherds have been making cheese from sheep's milk for centuries, and the biology of that milk is fundamentally different from what fills the cooler at a standard grocery store. Almost all commercial cow's milk in the United States and most of Europe contains something called A1 beta-casein. Sheep's milk contains only A2 beta-casein. That single structural difference in protein changes how the milk behaves during digestion. A1 casein releases a compound called BCM7 during breakdown that A2 does not. BCM7 is linked to gut inflammation, bloating, and an elevation in IGF-1, a growth factor that, when chronically elevated, accelerates cellular aging. Multiple reviews published in the International Dairy Journal between 2018 and 2022 confirm that sheep's milk consistently produces a lower inflammatory response than equivalent quantities of standard A1 cow's milk. There is more. Aged sheep's cheese, pecorino aged for 6 months or longer, goes through a fermentation process that transforms the protein and the fat. Lactose is eliminated almost entirely. The fermentation bacteria produce ACE inhibitory peptides, compounds that work on blood pressure pathways through food rather than medication, and the vascular protection runs deeper than that. Sardinian Cannonau wine aside, aged pecorino contains procyanidins, the same class of compounds responsible for much of red wine's cardiovascular benefit, produced here through the extended fermentation of sheep's milk fat. It is one of the few solid foods with a documented vascular protective compound profile. A 2015 Dairy Matrix meta-analysis compared equal amounts of saturated fat delivered as aged cheese versus butter in randomized controlled trials. Cheese reduced LDL cholesterol, while butter raised it. Same fat, completely different biological outcome. The label says cheese, but the biology is something else. The practical swap is straightforward. Pecorino Sardo or Pecorino Romano at any well-stocked grocery store, or Manchego if those are harder to find, as it is also 100% sheep's milk. French Chèvre works for something softer. 1 ounce at breakfast or with lunch is what Giovanni's generation ate every day, not as medicine, but as food. Check the cheese in your refrigerator right now. Is it cow or sheep? That single swap, without changing anything else, is the foundation of this system. The second thing Giovanni's generation never consumed is what most people in the modern world treat as a daily staple: red meat, and especially processed red meat, every day of the week. In Solsis and the surrounding villages, meat is a Sunday food. Once a week, the whole family gathers for a roast often pork or lamb. It is a celebration, not a baseline. For the rest of the week, protein comes from eggs, cheese, fava beans, and lentils. Sardinian shepherds slaughter animals once or twice a year for the whole village. Meat is precious because it requires a death. That framing changes how often you reach for it. The Harvard School of Public Health tracked 121,242 adults over 28 years in a study published in the Archives of Internal Medicine in 2012. Each daily serving of red meat added 13% to all-cause mortality risk. Each daily serving of processed red meat, bacon, sausage, deli cuts, added 20%. These numbers survived adjustment for smoking, exercise, body weight, and total calorie intake. The mechanism is a combination of TMAO production from meat-eating gut bacteria, chronic IGF-1 elevation from high animal protein, and low-grade inflammatory signaling from heme-iron. Giovanni's generation was not following a study. They were following an economy. Meat was expensive, while fava beans were free because you grew them in the field. But the biology worked out in their favor anyway. The replacement is not a salad plate with no protein. It is a specific set of swaps. Meat 1 day per week, Sunday if you want to follow the model exactly, and fish twice a week. Sardines or mackerel are ideal, especially sardines because they are cheap and rich in omega-3s. The remaining 4 days, protein comes from eggs, pecorino, fava beans, lentils, and chickpeas. This is not deprivation. Giovanni's lunch every day is a bowl of fava beans with vegetables and bread. He finishes it satisfied and does not snack afterward. The third change in Giovanni's system is one that surprises people the most because it involves what he does drink, not just what he eats. Giovanni drinks wine every day with his lunch and with his evening meal, but he does not touch beer. He has never touched commercial spirits. The distinction matters because not all alcohol does the same thing in the body. Beer contains no significant polyphenols. It is a refined grain beverage, and in the quantities most people drink it, it elevates visceral fat and drives insulin dysregulation. Spirits are more concentrated in alcohol and have no protective compounds whatsoever. The liver processes them as pure metabolic load. Cannonau wine is different. Cannonau is the local name for Grenache, a grape variety grown at altitude in Sardinia's interior mountains, where UV stress causes the berry to produce extraordinary amounts of skin compounds called procyanidins. Sardinian Cannonau contains 2 to 3 times the procyanidin content of comparable red wines from other regions, according to analyses published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry. Procyanidins protect vascular elasticity, reduce oxidative stress, and support healthy blood pressure. The men of Ogliastra drink 2 to 3 small glasses with meals daily for their entire adult lives. Dr. Giovanni Pes, who has studied this population for 2 decades, considers the Cannonau to be one of the most plausible contributors to their vascular health profile. The practical version for people who do not live in Sardinia, Cannonau is exported and available at specialty wine shops under the name Cannonau di Sardegna. Grenache from Spain's Priorat region delivers comparable polyphenol levels. 2 small glasses with dinner, not a bottle, and always with food. If you do not drink alcohol, the polyphenol mechanism can be partially replicated through grapeseed extract supplements or high-quality olive oil, which contains its own class of vascular protective compounds. But the Sardinian system is built around wine at the table. Giovanni does not drink alone at 10 to 1 p.m. He drinks with food, with family, and with conversation. The context is part of the biology. The fourth removal is the one that costs Giovanni nothing to implement, requires no shopping list, and is the hardest for most modern people to actually do. Giovanni does not eat between meals. The kitchen in a traditional Sardinian home is closed between breakfast and lunch, in between lunch and dinner. You do not open the cabinet and find a snack. There are no snacks. The concept of a mid-morning protein bar or an afternoon handful of nuts would read as strange to his generation. Not unhealthy, simply foreign. You eat at the table with others at the meal. That is when food happens. What this creates biologically is a 12 to 14-hour overnight fast from the last meal in the evening to breakfast the next morning, plus 2 extended gaps during the day when insulin signaling drops to baseline. Continuous eating, even of healthy foods, keeps insulin elevated across the day. Chronically elevated insulin suppresses a process called autophagy, the body's cellular cleanup system, where damaged proteins and malfunctioning cell components are identified and cleared. When you eat constantly, that system never fully activates. A cohort study published in JAMA Oncology found that overnight fasting of 13 or more hours was associated with a significant reduction in cancer recurrence in breast cancer survivors, an effect attributed to improved metabolic regulation and reduced insulin exposure. Time-restricted eating literature from the Salk Institute and others has since expanded these findings across broader metabolic markers. Lower fasting glucose, improved lipid profiles, and reduced visceral fat accumulation. Giovanni does not fast intentionally, he just does not eat between meals. His last meal is light, bread, wine, sometimes a few olives or a piece of cheese, eaten around 7 p.m. He wakes at dawn and has breakfast, creating a 12-hour gap, minimum, without any planning at all. The snack aisle is one of the most profitable spaces in any modern grocery store. But Sardinian village kitchens do not have one. The fifth removal is the one with the most visible consequences. Giovanni's skin does not look 93. Traditional dietary surveys of the Ogliastra villages by Pess and colleagues found that the centenarian population was deriving less than 3% of total calories from added sugar. The average American consumes between 14% and 17% of total calories as added sugar, primarily through packaged foods, sweetened beverages, and condiments where sugar appears under 50 different names on ingredient lists. Here is the mechanism that matters for Giovanni's generation specifically, and that most discussions of sugar skip over entirely. Sugar competes with vitamin C for uptake into white blood cells. At chronically elevated blood glucose levels, immune cells become functionally less efficient, not visibly sick, just operating at a fraction of their capacity. The Sardinian centenarians have among the lowest rates of late-onset infection and immune-related decline documented in any European population study. Their sugar intake, measured across 6 decades of the same dietary patterns, explains part of that picture. Giovanni eats fruit. In season, in the fall, there are grapes from the hillside vineyards. In winter, oranges and apples from the market. That is dessert. Sweets exist in Sardinian culture, the pastries at Christmas, the festival cookies at Easter. But they mark celebrations, not Tuesday afternoons. The practical removal is not heroic, it is label reading. Any packaged product where sugar appears in the first 3 ingredients goes back on the shelf. Sweetened yogurt is replaced with plain. The fruit itself provides sweetness. Fructose metabolized in the liver from whole fruit, with fiber slowing absorption, behaves differently than sucrose in a granola bar. Here is the principle that ties all of it together, and it is simpler than any of it looks individually. Giovanni's system does not fight his body. It removes the things that constantly force his body to fight itself. The A1 casein in cow dairy, the body fights that. The daily red meat, the body fights that. The beer and spirits, the body processes them as damage. The constant snacking, the body fights to maintain insulin and autophagy simultaneously and cannot. The sugar, the body deals with immune suppression and glycation until it can no longer do so efficiently. Remove those 5, and the body is not fighting, it is just living. And when human biology is not fighting, it turns out to be extraordinarily durable. Researchers who study the Ogliastra centenarians consistently find lower CRP and lower IL-6, the 2 primary markers of chronic systemic inflammation, than age-matched controls from urban Italian populations. They find lower fasting insulin, higher HDL, and better preserved grip strength. These are not the biomarkers of people who age more slowly because of good luck. They are the biomarkers of bodies that spent 9 decades not being asked to manage self-inflicted damage. Most people who try to replicate a Blue Zone diet add things. They read about polyphenols and buy supplements. They read about fava beans and add them to an already overcrowded shopping cart alongside their yogurt, their deli turkey, their afternoon crackers, and their dessert every night. The additions help a little, but the removals help a lot. The mistake is trying to change all 5 at once. Someone hears the full system, feels motivated, removes cow dairy, red meat, beer, snacks, and sugar in the same week, manages it for 10 days, and then finds themselves exhausted by the management and back at square one. Giovanni did not adopt this system. He was born into it. The first week, all you need is the foundation. Before we get to the phase-in, I want to tell you what the Solo cemetery looks like. You walk through the wrought iron gate on the east end of the village. The stones are not old, they are still being added. You read the dates, 96, 99, 102, 104. Not one person, not a few outliers. Tombstone after tombstone. In a village with a few hundred residents, the numbers should not statistically be possible. They are not outliers. They are the norm. That 20-year window between 1996 and 2016, during which Sulo held the Guinness World Record, was not a fluke of measurement. It was the cumulative result of a specific way of living maintained across generations in the same hills. Drive 2 hours inland from Cagliari to reach those hills. The roads get narrower, the stone houses get older, and you pass actual sheep on the road, unhurried, walking where they want. The air smells like wild herbs, and rosemary grows between the rocks. The shepherds know each sheep by name. Giovanni grew up watching his father do what he does, and his father watched his grandfather. Nobody sat down and designed a longevity protocol. They ate what was available, when it was available, in the quantities that made sense for the work they did. The 5 things they avoided were not on a list. They simply were not part of the world. His American counterpart, born in the same decade to similar European ancestry, many whose grandparents immigrated from this exact region of southern Italy, is statistically on 7 medications. His knees hurt, and he got his second stent at 78. He eats red meat 4 days a week, has cheese from a cow every morning, drinks beer on weekends, snacks between every meal, and finishes dinner with something sweet. The genetic distance between these two men is not large, but the plate distance is enormous. Giovanni's grip at 93 is still strong enough that when he shakes your hand, you feel it. He walks without a cane and knows the name of every person in Sulo. He is not waiting for anything. He is just living fully in his 90s on a hillside in Sardinia, doing what his father taught him without thinking about it as a protocol. What I just walked you through is the Sardinian system. 5 removals, 1 zone. The Blue Zone body reset covers all 5 blue zones in one 90-day protocol: Sardinia, Okinawa, Icaria, Nicoya, and Loma Linda, with the shopping lists already written for every week, the meal plans already structured, and a printable weekly tracker so you can see the pattern building. It is a PDF, instant download, and works on any device. If you are watching this on your TV right now, there is a QR code on screen. Scan it, and in 60 seconds, you have the full protocol. The link is also in the description below. Here is how to phase this in so that it actually sticks. Your first 2 weeks, do one thing only: replace the cow dairy. Go to the store and buy 1 wedge of pecorino or manchego. Put it where you would normally reach for your shredded cheddar or your sliced American cheese. That is it. Nothing else changes. Eat the sheep cheese with whatever you would normally eat and notice what happens. Most people report less bloating within 72 hours, not because they believe it will work, but because the protein structure of what they are digesting actually changed. That is your only job for the first 2 weeks. Weeks 3 and 4, add the meat reduction. You are not removing meat entirely. You are moving it to Sunday. Monday through Saturday, your protein comes from eggs, your pecorino, lentils, and fish twice a week. Sardines or mackerel are under $3 a can and have more omega-3 per dollar than almost anything else in the store. The fava beans can be dried and cooked in a large batch Sunday afternoon for the whole week. They keep in the refrigerator for 5 days. Week 5, look at your evenings. When did you last eat? If the answer is within an hour of going to sleep, push the last meal back slightly. Aim for 2 to 3 hours before bed. Not dramatically, just a small shift that opens the overnight window. The beer and spirits swap. Move to a small glass of Grenache or Canonau with dinner if you drink. If you do not drink, this step simply does not apply to you and costs you nothing. Skip it. The sugar is the final layer, and by the time you get to it around week 6 or 7, the other removals will have shifted your palate enough that sweet packaged food tastes different than it did before. This is not willpower, it is biology. Reducing insulin exposure over a few weeks changes taste receptor sensitivity. Things that seem normal start tasting sharper, heavier. The seasonal fruit becomes genuinely satisfying in a way it did not before. Which of those 5 items is already out of your kitchen or almost out? Tell me in the comments. I am genuinely curious where people are starting from. The full grocery list for this system runs about $40 a week. One wedge of pecorino or manchego, roughly $12. One bottle of canonau or grenache, around $12. A loaf of sourdough bread, $6. Dried fava beans and lentils together, $5. Seasonal fruit like apples, oranges, or grapes, $6. Fresh vegetables, $8. And 2 servings of fresh fish, sardines or mackerel, $10. That is it. That is the Sardinian table. The morning you stop checking the list, the morning you reach for the pecorino automatically, cook the lentils without measuring, and pour a small glass of wine at dinner without thinking about it, that is the day the system has become yours. It took Giovanni's generation decades, but it does not have to take you that long. The decisions are already made, and the biology has been studied now in ways the shepherds of Solo never needed because they were living the results. Your one action after this video: the next time you buy cheese, buy sheep instead of cow. Not at a specialty store if there is not one near you. The manchego at most large grocery chains is 100% sheep's milk. Read the label. One swap, one purchase. The foundation starts there. Subscribe to the Blue Zone Way for the full series. We are covering all 5 Blue Zones this week. Tomorrow, the Okinawan foods that reverse the aging process from the inside out. The week does not stop here. And tell me below, which of the 5 is going to be the hardest one for you to remove? The daily cheese, the red meat, the beer, the snacking, or the sugar? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. Giovanni never worried about dying young. He was too busy living. That is the whole system right there. If this story changes the way you look at the simple choices on your dinner plate, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history and the biological secrets they tried to bury. Plant the seeds for your future. The next treasure of longevity will be revealed soon.